I call to order the Personnel Committee meeting for October 18th, 2023 at 4 o'clock p.m. First item of business is approval of minutes, approval of the September 6th, 2023 Personnel Committee minutes, and I need a motion from the committee.
Move we approve.
Great. Motion by Alder Jetzer. Any comments? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. Moving on to agenda item 3, public appearances for non-agenda items. We don't have anyone in chambers and it looks like we have no one online, so we can move on to agenda items. Item 4A, classification title update, updating the classification title of civilian service employee to community service officer. Sarah, you want to get us started?
Absolutely. I made a little PowerPoint for you today to walk through the agenda items. I just think it helps keep it real simple. So the civilian service employee is a classification in the police department that basically enforces city's parking ordinances, investigates animal complaints, directs traffic, helps in dispatch, and then also maintains the vehicle and equipment inventory. So I thought it'd be helpful to know kind of what does this classification do. It used to be titled a community service officer, actually civilian service officer several years ago. And then we are looking to bring it back to a community service officer, which is kind of the industry norm. So Chief Leahy is here to kind of give you a backstory of why it was changed years ago from officer to employee.
So I think the main thing from a historical perspective was, does it lead to providing the community with any level of confusion? Are they a police officer? Are they not a police officer? So I think that was one of the main factors in making the switch to civilian service employee. In addition to the name change, there was also some uniform modifications to make it a very business casual, very civilian looking uniform attire, as well as modifying some of the images and graphics on their department vehicles to really take away or make it abundantly clear that this employee is not a police officer. However, they do hold some level of authority, perhaps, or some level of added responsibility of why they're in the neighborhoods the way it is. Like Sarah had mentioned, a lot of the drive now is to be more in line with our contemporary law enforcement partners to make it consistent across the board, because if you look at a lot of law enforcement agencies, it's a community service officer. And that would fall more in line with their actual job responsibilities. They do enforce ordinances and laws, not only through parking, but also through humane. They do have humane officer capabilities as well. So that mixed with some additional concerns related to our recruitment and retention. A lot of times if you're in college or you're interested in being a police officer, a lot of times that first step into the doors of a police department is, I'm going to apply to be a community service officer. It's kind of that springboard. And if there's potential future police officers that are looking at our website and they'd say, oh, I guess they don't have community service officers, that might impact our ability to get those potential candidates to move into the police officer position. So those are some things that we'd like to kind of have their job description and what that position truly is, kind of meet that or match that in the job title.
It's a job title change only, so there's not a compensation change to it.
Great. It looks like there's no updates to the position description either.
No.
Okay, it's just strictly the name change.
Strictly the name change.
And in terms of changing the name, is all the, for lack of a better word, branding around the position, the car and the
Nothing would have to get modified there either. It just says it's got our standard city logo and it says police department underneath it, so it would not impact that.
Any questions from the committee?
Just because I don't know what CSOs do other than what's listed here, but nobody does all of that description, right? People specialize in like somebody who maintains your vehicle fleet? Is that like, to what level is that? Is that?
So anytime that there is something that goes wrong with the brakes need to get repaired, there needs to be an oil change. They assist with shuttling the vehicles back and forth to GenCom or to get new lights and a new squad outfitted, changing tires. They're doing it.
And they'll do that, and they're doing the animal control.
And
They're
parking
doing all of
enforcement.
it.
Yep.
Wow, okay.
They are a Swiss Army knife of job descriptions, job duties.
One more question. You said humane capabilities? What is
Yeah,
that
so
entail?
they can investigate anything related to the maltreatment of animals. If there's barking dog complaints, or if there's a situation where somebody has too many wild or animals in their house, if they're being maintained humanely, they can investigate those types of situations.
So when you say humane, that's applied to animals only, not
Correct.
people who
No.
need like humane restraint or something?
No, it's just animals.
Joe, any?
I do not have any questions. This all makes sense and is clear.
Great. And so do we have someone currently in this position?
Yeah, we have two
Great, two.
CCs right now.
Well, sounds pretty straightforward. No other questions? We'll go ahead and take a motion to approve the new classification title. Can I get a motion from the committee to update the classification of civilian service employee to community service officer?
I'll make that.
So move.
All right, I'll give that one to Alder Maldonado. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries. Moving on to agenda item B. Oh, thanks so much. Agenda item B, reclassification of engineering technician 2, approval of the reclassification of a 1.1 full-time employee engineering technician 2 in pay grade H, incumbent John Roche, to a 1.0 full-time employee engineering technician 3 in pay grade I.
You got it.
Sarah?
So as you recall, in one of our last personnel committee meetings, we added a 1 through 3 engineering technician series. We have a current engineering technician 2, John, who started with us in 2019. Just to give you an idea of the current structure, so we have John, who's a 2. We have a vacant position that we just offered to today, and that person will come in as an engineering technician 2. And then we have Sam Schultz, who is our engineering technician trainee. So recall the trainee designation that you had approved at a prior personnel committee meeting. And she'll be moving to a Tech 1 in March of 24 off of the trainee designation. So over the last 4 years, John has performed all the functions of an engineering technician 2 with greater professional expertise. In addition, he has started to assist with project management of maintenance projects, inspection contracts and developments, as well as started to prepare the appendices for bid documents and quantities for cost estimates. He also provides training to lower level technicians. So when we have this new technician come in and when we have Sam, he helps with some training. And he also has his concrete testing certification. So if you look at the Engineering Tech 3, all of those responsibilities are listed in there, and he would have to have a concrete testing certification, which he has. So a Tech 3 has a minimum of 6 years of progressive responsible work experience, and he has more than that. So for those reasons, making a recommendation to reclassify, John, who is a 1.0 FTE Engineering Tech 2 in pay grade H to a 1.0 FTE Engineering Tech 3 in pay grade I. We would be looking to, the approximate cost for 2023 is $1,300. The 2024 cost has already been incorporated into the mayor's proposed budget. So we are using vacancy savings to cover the cost for this year. So everything is taken care of in the budget. I also have Tracy here, the Assistant Director of Public Works, if you have any questions related to John's work. So thank you.
Well, fantastic. That was very thorough. Any questions from the committee?
None from me.
Great. So I just are we almost fully staffed in Public Works?
It's amazing. We just hired a utility engineer yesterday. So she starts on November 1st. And then we have a candidate who we extended an offer, and he is potentially looking at mid-November, early December for start. And then we will be fully staffed in Public Works.
Wow.
Very exciting.
That is like a dream come true. It's never been fully staffed since I've been on council, so
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah.
wow, congrats.
Right.
We made it, good job,
Yeah.
that's.
So
that's
the
amazing.
average public works employee has been here like 3 years, but that's only because of Tracy.
Tracy has been here. How many years have you been here, Trace?
I will be 24 on November 1st.
That's amazing.
Wow.
All right.
Yep.
Well, fantastic news. If there's no more questions, we'll go ahead. We need a motion from the committee to reclassify John Roche from Engineering Technician 2 to Engineering Technician 3, which includes that pay grade change.
I move we,
I'll move.
alright,
Alderman Maldonado made the motion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thanks so much, Tracy.
Thank you, Trace.
Moving on to agenda item C, update to sick leave at retirement, disability, or death policy.
So we're always looking at ways we can enhance benefits, and one of the ways we'd like to do that is updating our sick leave policy update. So if you look at our current policy, I have a little snippet of it here. An employee who is retiring from the city with 20 or more years of service gets a full payout of their sick leave up to a maximum of 1440 hours. Our proposed change is simply moving the 20 years to 15 years. So we want to allow for a non-represented employee who is retiring, not terminated from the city or retiring, to receive the maximum payout of sick leave not to exceed 1440 hours by going to that change. So the majority of the financial impact should not impact our property tax levy, so I did check with Misty on that. The ancillary impact is for those that may choose to retire earlier. There's always that possibility now that we change that, which would trigger the payout of other PTO balances. However, these costs are usually supported by vacancy savings before the new employee is hired, and again, should have a minimal impact on our property tax levy. The annual payout of sick leave in excess of the max amount does not change with this policy. The short-term impact, we did pull a listing of employees. We have 2 employees that have or will soon have between 15 to 20 years of experience, or will soon be retirement age and have more than 20 hours of sick leave banked. The total value of the hours that could now be paid out is about $32,000 with $19,000 in the general fund. So it is something financially we can support, and if we do make this change, it potentially could impact 2 employees that would be able to retire earlier if they chose to and receive that full max sick leave payout.
We think this is also a recruitment piece, in so much as, when you're looking for folks who have experience, but maybe they're, at a stage where they don't necessarily see themselves, having 20 more years of work in them. This reduces that threshold where they may still be able to say, hey, I can go to Fitchburg, I take my experience and expertise, and I only need to put in 15 years in order to receive a benefit. Again, assuming they are retiring in accordance with Wisconsin retirement system guidelines. So we're hopeful that, there could be a situation here or there where it also benefits us on the recruitment side of folks who have more experience.
Sounds great. Sounds like I appreciate the description of the financial impacts. Yeah, that's always a good summary. It also seems that if we trigger a retirement, I would think that often you bring on someone new at a lower pay grade.
Yep.
So that it seems like there's a good chance that the budget impact will be minimal, if not negative. So sounds like a good change. Any questions? Seeing none, we do need to vote on this, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll move approval on an update to the sick leave and retirement, disability, or death policy.
Fabulous. We have a motion on the table by Alder Jetser. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries. Moving on to agenda item 4D, holiday work policy amendment.
All right, so originally this was approved in May of 2023 by the Personnel Committee. This was a new policy we put in place so that employees who have to work on a holiday receive a holiday premium. As with any new policy, sometimes we need some clarifications after we put it into practice. And so we did find we needed to add some clarifications to the policy. So if you look in the packet today, there's a proposed holiday work policy amendment of kind of what we're looking to change. But basically, we're trying to define that the time period of a recognized holiday is between 12 a.m. and 11:59 p.m. on the holiday. So we just wanted to make sure that that is clear. Holiday work comp time for exempt employees may be earned as well, but at 1/2 times the hours worked. So the original policy said 1.5 times, so it wasn't what it was intended to be. So for example, an exempt employee working 8 hours on Memorial Day is going to get 4 hours of comp time, not 12 hours of comp time. So we wanted to make sure we made that clear. We're also removing the maximum hours. If you recall in the original policy, it said something about a maximum of 4 hours or 12 hours, I believe it was. We just want to make sure if they work on a holiday, any time between 12 a.m. and 11:59, that they're given the holiday premium for all hours worked. So whether it's 8 hours, 12 hours, we want to make sure that there's not a maximum on there, because the whole point is that you're having to be here on a holiday, you should receive a premium. These updates do have a cost associated with them, about $31,504. The good news is it has already been added to the mayor's proposed budget for next year. Thanks to Misty realizing that, if we tweak this, we need to make sure we're prepared to have it in the budget. So there is that cost. But really, it's the same policy, the same concept, but just trying to provide some clarification.
So under what circumstances would somebody argue that hours not on the holiday are on the holiday?
So for example, for the fire union represented employees, if they start work the day before and work into the holiday, they get holiday time for not only the hours worked on the holiday, but maybe the night before when they came in at the
For the
beginning
full
of their
shift.
shift, for their
Okay.
full shift. That's the only difference here. So we do realize that this is for even our paid on-call firefighters. So we are treating our paid on-call firefighters a little differently than our career firefighters. But financially, this is what we can afford to do. At this time, we can't mirror the contract at this time like the firefighters get.
The hours do align with the police contract though, as far as that language was added into the most recent police contract, that the holiday hours are defined as 12 a.m. to 11:59 p.m.
So just fire, that's a little bit different.
Yeah, it seems like getting rid of that maximum would be important too for someone that might have to come in for an emergency, might have been here all day on a holiday unexpectedly.
Absolutely.
We don't want to penalize them for,
Exactly.
that makes a lot of sense. Any other questions?
Do we ever run in, there's a paragraph in here that's like not part of the changes that says if somebody volunteers to work, they're gonna get straight time. They're only gonna get paid the premium if they are required to work. Do we ever run into a situation where we have, 3 people required to run the department, but somebody had volunteered ahead of time, and so we got 3 people earning the premium and 1 not?
I don't recall that ever being an issue before. And as we move into a PTO bank potentially for next year, where people can use their holiday whenever, we want to make it clear that if you choose to work on a holiday, you're not going to get the holiday premiums, only if you're required. So that's why that piece is so important in this policy, as we look to transition to a PTO bank where we combine our floating holiday, or have a true floating holiday bank.
And to meet minimum operating requirements for that particular holiday. So, there could be a situation, using payroll as an example, where they may feel like it would be nice to come in and work on a Monday in order to keep my payroll processing going, but is it required for you to work on the Monday in order to get your payroll processed in time for Wednesday at 4 o'clock? Perhaps not. That's a conversation that needs to be had with the finance director, to ensure that it does meet that operational requirement. So we really want to make sure that we're recognizing those folks who are truly required to work on a holiday in order to carry out the duties of their particular role or their department, and that folks are not just simply choosing to work the holiday in order to capture this. And we don't envision that there'll be any real notable impact, quite honestly. Of course, there is a cost because some folks think about our parks maintenance employees in particular, who are coming in on 4th of July, for instance, to maintain the splash pad, empty trash at the shelters and so forth. Those folks weren't getting holiday premium previously to come in and do that work. Utilities, if a water main breaks, on Christmas Day, they weren't getting overtime. holiday premium to come in and address that utility issue. So these are the sorts of situations where we know there will be a cost associated with, but it was appropriate to recognize. But we don't envision that this is going to drastically change any department's operations. They shouldn't now be scheduling additional people to work on a holiday because now they're recognized, for it. It should really be to meet the minimum requirements for that particular department's operations.
Do we have a sense of, do a lot of people take advantage of the comp time?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The exempt employees?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so they'll.
They only get it for, special project work after evening meetings or emergency situations. So you don't always get that comp time bank where you're earning the comp time, but it has to be within the policy parameters.
Nice.
Yeah, people use that.
Seeing no other questions, I will take a motion on amending the holiday work policy as laid out in the packet.
So moved.
Motion by Alder Jetzer. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries. Moving on to agenda item 4E, update to the city's compensation compression policy.
Yeah, so the compression policy, this is a policy that was put in place back in 2014. It basically states that between a supervisor and the employee that they supervise, there needs to be a certain percentage. Back in 2014 through now, it's always been 10%. So we always try to ensure a supervisor is making at least 10% more than their highest paid subordinate. And so what we're trying to move toward is Carlson Detman made a recommendation that the norm is a 7.5% differential, except in the cases where a non-exempt employee is moving to an exempt level position and they're losing that overtime payment ability. In that case, Carlson Detman said you should still ensure a 10% differential. So I put a recommended policy here up on the slide as kind of draft language, but basically supervisory positions will be placed in a step within their pay grade that provides a percentage differential in base hourly pay between their position and that of the highest paid immediate subordinate as follows. So 7.5% differential for a non-exempt employee who's moving to another non-exempt position. I'll give you some examples on the next screen. And then 7.5% differential for an exempt employee moving to an exempt supervisory position. You might be asking yourself, do we really have non-exempt supervisory positions here? And we do. Our police sergeants, for example, are non-exempt. So just to give you an example. And then 10% differential if you're moving from a non-exempt position to an exempt supervisory position. So this primarily affects our police department. That's where we have a lot of current compression issues. To give you an example, if a non-exempt police sergeant is going to be promoted to an exempt police lieutenant, there's still the pay increase they get through the promotion process in the handbook. It says at least a 5%. But we want to make sure that that 5% is at least 10% higher than the highest paid subordinate. Now, if an exempt accounting manager, for example, promotes to an exempt level finance director, we're just going to make sure there's a 7.5% differential between that position and their highest paid because it's exempt to exempt. Positions that this may impact due to current compression issues are in the police department, so we're not looking at changing anyone's pay. This is just going forward. So for example, if a police officer promotes to a police sergeant, we're going to ensure at least a 7.5% differential. Detective going to police sergeant, 7.5%. Because again, these are non-exempt to non-exempt. Now, when you take a police sergeant that's non-exempt, promoting to an exempt level, lieutenant, captain, deputy chief, then that's the 10%. And then lastly, if a lieutenant or promotes to a captain or deputy chief, then it's 7.5%. So again, the average compression differential per Carlson Detman is 7.5%, but no one is going to see a decrease. This is just moving forward so that overall it should help our pay plan so that we don't have so many people at the max. Because right now we have such compression issues because we have this this 10% requirement. So if we can reduce that, it gives us a little bit more room in the long run.
All right, I'll start questions if anyone has any.
What if the person being promoted is the highest paid person at that level, and the next guy down is already 7.5% less, does somebody get promoted with no pay raise?
No, so this is different. So think of promotions as any promotion, we always take them to the step that ensures a 5% increase. So every promotion is always going to get an increase. The differential is something separate. The differential is ensuring that whatever increase they received, it has to be a minimum of 5%, but we also have to ensure there's at least that 7.5% differential between the highest paid. So it's not going to impact their raise that they get in terms of a promotion because we have a set 5% in the handbook for that. That's actually for reclassifications, forgive me. If they go through a competitive process for promotion, they can actually negotiate anywhere between the ranges. But in the end, we make sure that their final pay that we offer them is at least 7.5% higher if it's a non-exempt to a non-exempt, or 10% higher if they're going from a non-exempt to exempt level role.
Because what may happen with that 5% increase is it wouldn't be a high enough differential, is that typically what you're
That's
saying?
sometimes what happens, so then
So-
they end up getting much more than a 5% increase because we have to make sure we have that huge spread between their highest paid employee and them.
Something that happens as people employs a lot of longevity, right?
Yes.
They're in the department for a long time,
Yes,
they're getting
exactly.
pay raises slowly.
Well, what's funny is if you get a promotion to sergeant right now, we're already offering you at the tail end of the range because of the compression, because we have to make sure there's that differential between the highest paid police officer if you're gonna be promoted to sergeant. So instead of starting them at step 1 of the pay range for sergeant, they're already in the pay for performance, almost toward the maximum of the range. So that's the issue we have right now. So in the long term, we're probably gonna work with Carlson Detman to create a new pay plan just for police, because we're looking at adding a captain, which is another management tier, and we don't currently have any room per our compression policy, even if we go down to 7.5%, to add another level. So you'll probably see a new pay plan early 2024 so that we can insert another level in the police department.
If somebody moves up, we establish their pay. What happens if one of their subordinates gets a pay raise and that gap is now less, what happens?
We have to ensure that they get the increase. So we just had that, Drew, one of our lieutenants, we pulled a report to know that, okay, we need to make sure he's always at least 10% higher. So one of his employees got a merit increase in April, so we had to make sure we adjusted Drew's pay to still be 10% higher. So
So
right
if you're already
now-
there, you're grandfathered in at the percent?
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. So, well, they're grandfathered in terms of the wages right now, but moving forward, we want to ensure it's just 7.5%. So we're not gonna always ensure 10%.
Okay,
It'll go down to the new rules, but no one's going to see a pay decrease from this policy in terms of what they're making right now.
but it is possible for somebody to be newly promoted and get paid less than their immediate peers because of this
You're
change.
exactly right, you're exactly right. It's not a perfect change, but I mean, it does, there's some drawbacks in terms of that happening, where they're looking at their peers who got a little bit of a higher raise increase because we were trying to ensure a 10% instead of 7.5%, but we have to start somewhere.
There's a couple of issues. You bring up a very fair point, Alder Jesser, in regards to that. And one of the other issues with the current pay plan that, has been identified over the last 7-8 years under this new pay plan is when you promote, for instance, an officer to a sergeant, and there's 9 sergeants, right? They all, when they're promoted, move to whatever the differential is. Previously, it's been 10%. Now it's going to shift down to 7%. But all of those folks, regardless of how long they've been in the role, all reside around that 10% differential, and you could have a 15-year sergeant basically making the same amount of money as a 1-year sergeant because of the spread and how tightly compacted the compression issue is, particularly in the police department, and plus how we're already sitting at the max of the pay range in many cases for police sergeants, as an example as well. So there are a couple of issues that are kind of competing with one another, to be honest with you, and it's a challenge to get them addressed fully with any policy, and I think Sarah's on the right track here that we may need to bring an overall policy back to the personnel committee that pulls out the police department employees into and puts them into their own kind of pay structure. Somewhat affiliated, if you will, with the city's normal pay structure, but in such a way that we've been able to better address the compression issue exists within the department.
Because it's the only place that we have an issue with compression is in the police department. Otherwise, for all other city positions, we're doing just fine. There's no compression issues. Our supervisors are making quite a bit more than their highest paid employee.
And this isn't unique to Fitchburg. This, Carlson Detman does survey consulting or salary consulting, throughout the state and maybe beyond for all I know. But that is one of the suggestions that they oftentimes offer other municipalities that are struggling with compression issues, particularly in public safety where union contracts are still there, and that sometimes helps contribute to some of the compression issues as well, since the unions negotiate their wages, and then that does have a trickle-down effect on this whole compression issue when you move into the non-represented employees within the police department.
So sergeants are still represented employees, they're part of the union?
They're non-represented.
Okay, so once you hit the sergeant level, it's a non-represented position.
They're non-exempt but non-represented?
They're non-exempt and non-represented. It's very unique because usually you think of a supervisor position to be exempt from overtime, but they're non-represented, non-exempt staff.
A lot of that's tied to the shift level requirements.
And I assume the command staff at the police department has already been briefed on this, they're.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they were
Yes,
consulted
yeah.
before we even brought this forward.
All
They-
department heads were consulted. Yep.
And we prefer not to have any surprises
Yeah.
either.
Yeah, no
So,
surprises.
but right, and I appreciate you asking, but yeah, we certainly put this out before we even brought it forward, just to make sure that, there wouldn't be any significant concerns. And there was a timing issue on this, as you can imagine, this is a Carlson Detman recommendation that actually stemmed from the salary survey that had been done late last year that was implemented in the '23 budget. But we were trying to find an appropriate time to work this in, so based on promotional opportunities and so forth. So this was the best opportunity that had surfaced so far.
Any other questions? If not, I will entertain a motion from the committee to update the city's compensation compression policy.
So moved.
Motion from Alder Jetser to approve. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. Moving on to item 5, announcements.
Yeah, so we are looking for a December meeting, so I'd love to gauge your availability. We have a number of items, paid parental leave, increase in on-call pay. This is all pending council approval, but all the new. And then even our mission, vision, values, we'll have a presentation of the final for the personnel committee, and we have members of the core team that will be presenting that. So yeah, December will be a long meeting, so hopefully I'll reach out and we'll find a date on the calendar for that. That is all I've got for announcements.
A long meeting because of all the Christmas gifts you're handing?
I wish.
That sounds good, and obviously we have to wait till after the budget process, so
Exactly.
no meeting in November.
Yep, exactly.
Anything else?
That is it.
Great, so I can go ahead and move to adjournment.
So moved.
Motion from Alder Maldonado to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. We are adjourned at 4:34 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Plenty of time before PSA.